First, our heroes are called in to investigate a robbery at Boston's Museum of Fine Art, which puts them on the trail of a devilish device. Then, a fatal animal attack at a private zoo turns out to be far more than meets the eye, and if our heroes aren't careful, they'll find themselves the next course on the menu. These are the two tales you'll find within Call of Cthulhu, Clockwork Claws, two scenarios for Pulp Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. And I'll share my review right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I'll be reviewing Call of Cthulhu, Clockwork Claws, two scenarios for Pulp Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. This is written by Peter Berbegal, J.F. Martel, James Coquelet, and David Naylor. And I apologize, I guarantee I've mispronounced at least one of those names. This 132-page hardcover is in stores right now. You can get it with PDF if you order directly from Chaosium Inc. Carries an MSRP of $29.99. As of this recording, the PDF is not available yet over on Drive-Thru RPG. I will take a guess. It's going to fall somewhere in the range of $14.99 to $19.99 when it appears, most likely in the next few days. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Clockwork Claws. Few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Chaosium Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, there are spoilers ahead. So if you're a player and your keeper has picked up Clockwork Claws, just haven't started running it yet, maybe they've ordered it, maybe they're talking about running this. Keep in mind, there are spoilers to be had. I am warning you right up front. Now, of course, if your keeper has been kicking around picking up this book, let them know about this review. That way they can approach Clockwork Claws and make a far more informed buying decision. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. As I mentioned in the open, we've got a couple of scenarios in Clockwork Claws, and they are aimed at Pulp Cthulhu. So I do want to mention, you can run these two adventures with just Call of Cthulhu. You would have to tweak this a little bit to help improve the survivability of your player characters. But other than that, I could easily see running both of these tales for just Call of Cthulhu as opposed to bringing in the options of Pulp Cthulhu. Now, of course, if you are running Pulp Cthulhu, then you are going to be all set because both these adventures, especially the second adventure, is going to have opportunities for some really good pulpy action. Our first adventure here of Clockwork Clay starts off with our heroes being brought in to investigate a robbery at Boston's Museum of Fine Art. And they find that a couple of ancient Jewish relics have been stolen. And as their investigation progresses, they find out that there is the code, a script, a piece of paper in one of these relics, which actually would allow for the activation of a golem. And it's been stolen by one of two competing factions. One of the factions wants that script in order to activate a golem to help protect the human race, while the other, a millionaire, is trying to get this script so they can activate this mechanical man. And supposedly, our millionaire has been informed of all of this by way of these ancient scholars who have reached out beyond time to teach them how to build this mechanical man. And when this mechanical man is activated, then the human race will experience a new era of peace and prosperity. Now, of course, this is Pulp Cthulhu. Do you think that's really what's going to happen? Of course not. So our millionaire is being misled by the Migo. And the Migo are actually an offshoot of Migo, because normally the Migo don't want anything really to do with the human race. They just don't want to be discovered. Well, this offshoot group actually wants to bring about the fall of mankind. And in order to assist doing that, they have misled this millionaire into building this mechanical man, which is actually going to house an avatar of Nyarlathotep. So it is the TikTok man that the Migo are tricking this millionaire into building. Now, there are other associates of this millionaire who are actually in on the real plan. It seems like he's one of the few that doesn't realize what's really going on. I do like this adventure, although I have to say that I think there's some missed opportunities here. I am kind of surprised that we have the Migo. Strangely enough, it seems lately the Migo have kind of replaced the Deep Ones as kind of the go-to villain Lovecraftian races with a lot of adventures. I would have liked to have seen something like maybe an offshoot of the Great Race of Yith involved with this, as opposed to the Migo. But all in all, a solid adventure. I would tweak a few things personally if I were running this. One of them probably being using the Great Race as opposed to the Migo. But all in all, this is a solid adventure for Pulp Cthulhu. Now, before we get into the second adventure, let me talk about the production quality of Clockwork and Claws. As far as the paper stock, nice and thick. Very, very well done there. As far as the binding, it is a stitched binding. We've got a nice little bookmark. This is a book that's going to hold up to repeated use at your table. Now, as far as the artwork, I got to say, some of the artwork is, I don't want to say it's bad, but as far as Call of Cthulhu adventures go, some of the artwork is a little under par. And not all of it, but there is some. Some of it's really muted. And I think I have more issues with the artwork for the first adventure than I do for the second adventure. All in all, the artwork is fine. It's just not to the usual standards, I think, of most Call of Cthulhu releases. Now, our second adventure, Wolf Among the Flock, I dig a ton. I would have an absolute blast running this. So the premise here is that the heroes are associated with the owners of this private zoo. They might be friends. They may have, had something to do with them in another adventure. In fact, if you are a keeper and you do pick this up, you might want to slip those two into an adventure leading up to this, just so there's a bit more shock involved when it turns out that they are killed by a bear attack. In fact, the bear is part of their zoo. So the heroes become involved because they're going to attend a memorial, which is taking place at this private zoo. And of course, this is more than just some animal attack at the zoo. The bear really had nothing to do with this. The owners of the zoo have a daughter who has grown up in the shadow of her parents' adventures and always felt like they took a back seat to the animals at the zoo. And in a fit of rage, she murders her parents. And part of it is because she finds this branch, this kind of almost like big piece of wood that turns out to be an egg of Shub-Niggurath, of the young of Shub-Niggurath. And it's really interesting because this daughter has actually delved into the mythos. She's a bit of a sorceress, in fact. And after she murders her parents, the egg hatches. So she's now completely lost her mind, and she is looking to nurture the young of Shub-Niggurath. And her game plan is to feed it to the point where it gets large enough. And because she knows these spells that allow her to transfer her consciousness into another animal, she's going to transfer herself into this thing and become an apex predator. Now, one of the really interesting aspects of this adventure is because she has this spell, she's able to jump into all the various different animals of the zoo to spy on our heroes, and if need be, to attack the heroes with these animals. There are a lot of different ways for the heroes to kind of figure out something's not quite right with the animals. And I've got to say, the possible outcome, the big climax of this adventure, should lead to some really exciting, maybe even a little over the top, pulpy adventure. And I got to say, this would really be something I would have an absolute blast running, because I think my gang would really latch on to some of the pulpy ideas for the big final confrontation, which could be really, really cool. As you can see, even just the artwork as I'm flipping through, major spoilers here. So then we're going to wrap up with our index, and that is a peek inside Call of Cthulhu, Clockwork and Claws, 2 scenarios for Pulp Cthulhu from Chaosium Inc. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. As I've already mentioned, I really, really dig the second adventure in Clockwork and Claws. That's not to say I don't like the first adventure. I would just tweak it quite a bit. First off, I would replace the Mi-Go. More than likely, I would go with the Great Race of Yith, kind of an offshoot of them rather than an offshoot group of Mi-Go. Part of it is because the Mi-Go seem to be kind of the go-to Lovecraftian race these days in Cthulhu role-playing adventures, not only Call of Cthulhu. And I think the Great Race would just be a better fit for what this story is. I love the fact that we've got the golem and that the heroes could conceivably activate that golem to fight on their behalf. I think that'd be very cool and lead to a pretty interesting finale. And of course, the second adventure, I think, is outstanding. I would run it pretty much as written, maybe a tweak here or there as far as how the animals react, or the animals under the possession of the daughter act towards the heroes. But all in all, really, really good stuff. I honestly think I would have a blast running it. And I could certainly see my players taking advantage of certain situations in the adventure, which could lead to a really pulpy, action-packed final confrontation. Very nicely done. As far as the production quality, paper stock, really nice. We've got the stitched binding. So this is a book that's going to hold up to repeated use. The artwork, as a whole, I would say is a little below par for what we normally experience with Call of Cthulhu releases. Not to say that the artwork is bad or anything like that. There are some really cool pieces in this volume. And then there are others that are sort of like, ho-hum. But all in all, I'll just say the artwork is fine. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Call of Cthulhu Clockwork and Claws 2 Scenarios for Pulp Cthulhu a 7.5 out of 10. Definitely dig that second adventure. Once again, I think I would have an absolute blast running that tale. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as Drive-Thru RPG, and to do so, just visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission on most of those sales. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal and become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in the show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. If you like the video, by all means, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to select all notifications, because that way YouTube is supposed to let you know not only of when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop role-playing game news and more. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.